listening to Second Wind with Joyce Buford, where women who are ready to expand their life adventure discover the tools to stop playing small and tap into the courage required to enjoy their second wind. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm delighted wherever you are. If you're listening to this in the afternoon, while you're driving, wherever it is, I'm glad you're here. Because, I made the promise when I started this show that I would only have great guests, that you get much reward from listening to the show. And you're going to love this one today because it talks about, I'm going to let Sam tell you about what it talks about. Because Sam Karliner, did I say that correct?
You did.
Is a husband, a father, and an Ironman triathlete. He is an attorney, and he is an attorney with a mission, but he is also this involves his mission, is an adoptive parent. So I welcome you, Sam. So tell us what we're talking about today.
I am so glad to be on your show today. It really brings me a tremendous amount of pleasure and happiness.
Thanks.
I am, as you said, I'm on a mission. What I am, as you said, is an adoptive parent. It's sort of one of the ways I define myself as I move through my life, but just as a parent. Mm-hmm. And I've been involved in the adoption community for many years, not just as a parent, but as a local sort of advocate. Mm-hmm. And about 10, 12 years ago, I got involved in Ironman. For those people who don't know, it's an endurance race. It's a pretty long day. It's a 2.4 mile swim, followed by a 112-mile bike ride, finished off with a 26.2 mile marathon for a total of 140.6 miles.
Right.
It's a long day.
It sounds like a long year for me.
And one of the things I started doing early on is I would write my children's name. I adopted my children 28 years ago. I write their names on the back of my shoes so they could come along for the ride with me and be with me every step of the way because I carry them in my hearts every day.
Yes.
And when I finished the race, my first race, it was a tremendous sense of accomplishment. But I started to realize that there's something bigger than me out there, that I can be doing more. And I saw a lot of other people raising awareness for different causes. Mm-hmm. So with a local agency that I'm connected with, Forever Families Through Adoption, here in Rye Brook, New York, I started fundraising for them. Mm-hmm. But not just money, but bringing awareness to an education on the topic of adoption. And I used Ironman as a platform to help get the word out. People are aware of. They could support me. They could follow me along in my journey, not just in training, but that day. I started to write people's names that would support me on the frame of my bicycle so they could be along for the ride. And it became a thing.
Oh, good.
I've done it now for many years and been pretty successful doing it. And programs like yours help to widen that reach of education and information that can get out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, for my listeners, I don't know if I've had an adoption parent on here before, but I also shared with Sam. He did not know because we just met this morning, actually, face to face, as we are Zooming here. I have two adoptive children that are now adults, and we were going through that process at about the same time. Sam with his twin girls. Boys, excuse me. How'd I get girls in there?
I don't offend anyone.
And so, and then I have two from Edna Gladney, which was a place over in Fort Worth. And so it was fun to share, and we have this to share because we traveled down the road. It's a little different road for each of us because of the methods that we went to find our birth mothers. So you're going to laugh at me, Sam. When I was preparing for you about 2 days ago, I looked at the Ironman And I just kind of thought that competition, and I just kind of thought, what are the descriptive words that I'd write down for such a commitment as the triathlon? Triathlon. And I did competitor, strong, dedicated, routine, committed, healthy, and driven. Do you like any of those?
Like a lot of them.
So anyway, you've pretty well taken that into your new passion, which is the adoptive arena. So tell us, I've shared with you, how did you find your birth mother that was willing to work with you? Because I think that's an interesting story.
So as we began to speak before the show, and I'll reiterate it now, things have changed over the last 30 years. It's
Yes, they
it's a
have.
different landscape, in part because of technology,
Oh yeah.
in part because education has slowly caught up and begun to demystify the world of adoption, and it's not considered a stigma anymore, if you will.
Right.
It's a bad connotation.
Right. And birth mothers are keeping babies as single parents a lot more.
And they are, right. And the world, there are more supports for people to do that.
Yes.
But it's always been, even back when you and I adopted it, it's always been important to empower, even more so now, and have the birth mother feel good about what they're doing. This isn't a bad thing. This is a loving decision that they're doing. Back when we adopted, we advertised in papers. There was no internet, or it was just really starting, I guess, loosely, across the country, that we were looking to adopt a baby. Mm-hmm. We had a phone number there, and we would get calls and field the calls, and different people had different reasons. The birth mother that we connected with was a little older. She already had a couple of children. And she just did not see herself parenting a child, or in my case, twins at the time.
Mm-hmm. She knew she was having twins.
Well, when she first called us, no.
Oh, okay.
When she first called us, no, she did not. The medical care that she was receiving at the time was only minimal, and she did not know she was having twins. That came later on. And actually, we had been speaking with her for several weeks. And I remember when we got the phone call, speaking to my wife, she said, "Are you sitting down? I have some news for you." I got very nervous because things looked like they were going well. You're laughing, but you know how to go. And when she told us, she was afraid that we were going to back out.
Yeah.
Because it was twins.
Right.
Obviously, we didn't. We were overjoyed. And she was going for one of her final checkups before she delivered, and she invited us to come out to visit her. And I specifically have us go with her to the appointment. We were able to drop everything that we were doing. We went out there and we spent some time with her for a couple of weeks before she delivered. So we got to know her, but more importantly, she got to know us. Yeah. So it was a decision that not only in her mind that she felt really good about, but somebody who we went to a zoo with, who we walked around with, who we shared some meals with and got to know her, felt really good about it. And we were able to discuss what sort of connection we wanted to have. And not just that we wanted to have, but that she wanted to have, which is still such an important piece in adoption today. And I think it's helping to empower women more, that birth mothers have a say in the amount of communication, what they want, because it is a loving decision and choice that they are making. It's not being made for them. And for some people, they haven't had that ability to be empowered and make those decisions. They've had decisions made for them. So this gives birth mothers, a lot of control.
Yes. And it's important that both parties feel comfortable and secure in their selection of each other, because these are important decisions, as you have said, and it's life-changing. So it's really, I have found it to be a wonder, although I never met the birth mother in our particular situation. We did not meet her. There was letters that she left and some communication like that, that we did read, and it was a way of getting a vision of her. So anyway, what?
I was going to say, in what you were saying and sort of demystifying it, so many people think that when it comes to adoption, either a child is placed for adoption or sometimes a pregnancy is terminated.
Yeah.
But there's that middle road where maybe a child is born and goes into the foster care system, which
Yes.
in many areas is not the most wonderful system.
No, it's not.
Or the mother keeps the child, really didn't want to parent the child, and her life takes a much more negative turn, either financially or socially, or and it's not a good situation for anybody.
Right.
And people don't really talk about that a lot. And a lot of what I found as I've been doing outreach and education, it's not just important to speak to the general community, but it's doctors and social workers and people in hospitals that sort of are the front line. You would be, because I was amazed at the number of women yearly that show up at a hospital to deliver, and the first words out of their mouth is, I really don't want to keep this child. I haven't made a plan. What do I do?
Right. Yeah.
And the only thing the system knows is the foster care system, is the state system. And it's overburdened, understaffed, and those are part of the reasons it's really not a great system.
So your organization is Forever Family Through Adoption. Is that correct? Okay. So how do you step in? I mean, you have a figure for me here that about 5 million Americans are adopted. I mean, it's very common to be adopted anymore. And so it certainly doesn't have the stigma. My kids, I told them they were adopted when they were like 3, I think. We never really kept it a secret, but I knew I needed to have that conversation someday to let them know where they came from. And the earlier, the better, because they accepted like, oh, okay. So at 3, that's about all they could do. So anyway, it was a well-known fact. And I think most children are aware that they're adopted earlier in life. I certainly hope so, because it helps them accept themselves as just another thing that happened to me, in my growth. So how do you interact? How do you connect with your children, not your children, but the children that you take into the Forever Family Adoption Agency?
So in the beginning, I knew the people that began the agency. So I was friendly with them through the adoption community.
So this was an established agency already?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
And over the years, through attending various fundraisers or events that they would have, I became more involved. And ultimately, I became a board member on their board of directors.
Yeah.
So that was how I became involved. And I got to see what they do. So in terms of the children, and agencies are interesting because there still are private adoptions, like I did, where you go out and find, quote unquote, find the birth mother finds you. With an agency operates a little differently in that they actively go out through education and may find birth mothers. May have hospitals and social workers, like we were speaking about, call and say, hey, we have a child who's about to be born or has been born.
Right.
So they can find and help connect birth mothers that way. They also work with families who just don't sit back and wait, but are actively going out there. And in today's world with social media, Facebook, Instagram, and it really is 6 or less degrees of separation until you can connect. So they work a lot on not just putting the connection together and the education for the birth parent and the adoptive parent up front, but once the child is born, they continue to provide a lot of support for the birth mother, right? In the months and sometimes years that follow, again, depending upon what the birth mother's wishes are.
Right.
And they're there because they're made up of a lot of social workers who are really excellent and experts in the area. They provide a lot of support for the adoptive parents as well as the child. Because, for you, it was very simple to tell your children they were 3 that they were adopted. We were telling our children, maybe even before that, it was just something we always talked about.
You have to practice sometimes.
You do. And it's easier when they can't talk
when they cannot understand.
But it became something that's so natural. And as I saw my children grow, sometimes I would pick them up from either a play date or as they got older from an event. They'd be talking to me. They said, "Oh, I met so and so, and they're adopted too."
Yes.
And I would look at them and say, "Gee, how did that come up?" Well, it's what do you like to do? I like to play baseball. I like to eat Oreos, and I'm adopted. Like it's really just
love it.
It was just part of who they were.
Yeah.
So the agency helps teach the adoptive parents how to do that. If there are issues, they're there as support. The agency also has programming during the year, not necessarily specifically on how to speak to your child, but maybe it's a bowling event or a picnic where a lot of other families are coming together. So all of a sudden you're hanging out with other kids and people, and they all just happen to have formed their family the same way you formed yours. And it's a very normalizing factor.
Yeah. I thought of this also, Sam, in the case of the pregnant mother who's going to adopt her child out, it's not the birth father is not always involved. So it really is her decision. Have you had many cases where the birth father was involved?
Actually, I have, to varying degrees.
Yeah.
Birth fathers certainly have a lot of rights as well.
Sure.
And when a child is placed for adoption and things are finalized in front of the court, it's not just the birth mother's wishes, but the birth father's wishes.
Right. That's probably newer. Because back then, when we didn't talk about the birth father at all.
Right, and I know different states have different laws and how.
That could be true.
That's a factor. In my case, we actually briefly met the birth father. He was a little older as well. He didn't really want to get involved with it. He had no problem but the agency has worked with not just birth mothers, but couples that this is what they want. But they certainly do make an effort because you don't want there to be problems, legal problems.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Somebody shows up at the last minute and, you never want anyone to be used as a pawn for something else, right? You never want somebody to get angry at a person and all of a sudden the child becomes in play. So the agency works very hard at not just, I hate to use the word vetting because it sounds like a nasty word, but making sure that everything is on the up and up and legitimate. A lot of people think of adoption, you're paying for a baby. You're not. I mean, there are costs involved and people involved that are getting paid, but that's why there are court oversight too. You just don't throw money at a situation and you see the baby. Right. And part of that vetting process looks to find out who is the birth father, right? What does the birth mother know? What are his wishes? What are his intentions? It's also important because the agency, as best as possible, tries to put together a medical background for the adoptive parents, which, is not only important at, birth in the first few months, but, there are times when, now my kids are older, I can remember in their early 20s, Dad, does this, I was at the doctor, does this run in our family? Well, I can tell you genetically what runs in my family.
Yes.
To the limited information I have that we were able to put together, then I can tell you genetically what the history was. So the agency worked really hard because that's an important component. That the birth mother knows who the birth father is.
Yes.
The birth father is willing.
Yes.
To disclose that information. But you're right. More often than not, most of the communication is with the birth mother.
Right. Right. We did get information about the birth father, but he was never involved in the discussion about. So when did you become, so Forever Families is not an organization that you started. It was already there and it was working fine. And you are still a fundraiser for them?
I am. They were already there. I did not start it. It was started by Joy Goldstein. She's a social worker. She's been in the adoption field over 30 years, first in the private area. And then, I think if you were to speak to Joy, she would tell you that as wonderful as private adoptions are, she just over the years kept seeing a growing volume of children being placed into foster care. And how that just wasn't working for those children. It wasn't working for the birth mothers that put them there. And she was able to take her background and her knowledge and her energies and create this agency in part to prevent that type of situation from occurring. And to give women better choices and better knowledge, and to give a lot of these children better futures and loving futures and a greater chance for success. So she formed the agency. She's got a wonderful staff of social workers and attorneys that work for her and staff. And that's how, so no, I did not form it. I'm happy to be an adoptive parent and an active participant to support them. But they run weekly, monthly information sessions, locally live, as well as Zoom, so people can learn about it. Not just adoptive parents, people that want to adopt, but birth mothers also can log on or go in person and get information. They're constantly, like I said, making outreaches there. Will connect with hospitals and social workers, sometimes in prisons and jails.
Yeah. So how would you, if there is a listener out there that is pregnant and she is making some difficult decisions, she's frantic, she's kind of, oh my, what am I going to do? Stage. What would you say would be some of the beginning steps she would need to take?
So I think the first beginning step is to be able to speak to somebody who understands where you're at. And that second part is important because it's very easy to speak to somebody who has no idea where you're at. So a social worker in the field who understands where you are, who can explain your options, is certainly a great place to start. I am obviously supportive of Forever Families Through Adoption. If you can go onto their Instagram page, it's Adoption FFTA, or you can find them on the web at Forever Families Through Adoption, all spelled out, .org.
Okay. Yes.
And you give a phone call and you will get a hold of Joy and she will speak to you. It doesn't commit you to placing your child for adoption. It doesn't commit you to doing anything. It gets the conversation going. It educates you. And as you said, it's a frantic time. And who's going to sort of calm you down and let you know that you have choices? I remember, as crazy as it sounds, as I told you, we took our birth mother to her doctor's appointment. She really had not had great prenatal care. And we were in the doctor's office, and he's examining her, and she introduced my wife to him as, this is the children's mother.
Oh.
Right? And then he went on to say to her towards the end of the, oh, would you ever consider just, letting them have one, and I'll find a good home and we'll place the other one.
Oh.
And she was taken aback. What are you talking about?
Split up the twins.
These are I'm giving birth to these children, and I have chosen these people as their parents. And and I think she was able and empowered to say that because she had been working with a social worker, and she had had some education and learned a little bit of the language and knew that this was her choice. So anyone picking up the phone and giving Joy a call, Joy talks to lots of people every day, every week, every month, because giving that information out is so critical. Joy may speak to somebody today, a potential birth mother, and that birth mother may never call her back. But she may have a friend who's in a similar situation next week, next month, next year, and it's the right thing and the right connection for them. So, the education and getting the word out is so important. I can't tell you, when I race, I have an FFTA jersey that I wear for our families through adoption, and I'll be there 9-10 hours into the race. I'll be somewhere 13-14 miles into the marathon, and I'll pass somebody, or somebody will pass me, and they'll say, hey, I'm adopted, or my kids are adopted, or thank you for doing that. And this is at a point in time when you can't breathe. You're trying to pull inspiration from just about anywhere anywhere you can. And wow, you can make that connection.
You get a boost of energy there.
Get a huge boost of energy.
Yeah. So how do you come? You have a question here. What have you learned from your Ironman competition and fundraising that inspire you?
That, Ironman likes to say that anything is possible. And one of the things, the takeaways from Ironman competition for me, is that winning or success can have a lot of different definitions. So often we tend to think about winning as who crosses the line first.
Yes.
Or success is who does best. And through my competitions, and I've done well, so I'm fortunate in that. But through my competitions, I've learned that just getting to the starting line is success.
Yes.
That's the win.
Right.
And similarly, in the support that I get from people that support me, and support that I get from my family, and looking at my children, I take so much pride and joy, not necessarily in my kids being the best or finishing first, but being happy in what they have done. And now that they're older, and what they've done without me. Right? That I'm able to sit back on the sidelines and watch. And I can be just as happy with their success, and I guess happy or supportive. I won't use the word failure. I'll use not achieving success in that time. NASA has a phrase that they never use the word failure.
Yeah.
They use another attempt at success.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
and being able to watch my kids grow and learn, being able to watch them be uncomfortable and be okay with it, because it's still a growth, it's still learning, has been very rewarding for me. And as you said before, when you were coming up with your descriptive words of commitment and whatnot, Ironman training takes a lot of commitment. There's a lot of time getting out there and working hard. And fortunately, I got into it a little later in life, so I didn't lose that much from my family time. But that commitment is just commitment across the board, you know, and it feels good.
Have you seen that your sons want to do the triathlon, the competition as well?
My children are fantastic supporters. They leave Ironman to me. I don't know what will happen as they continue to grow in life, but for right now, sitting on a bike for 6 hours is not for them.
Yay, yeah.
Maybe a nice hike in the woods, or a hockey game or basketball game, but no.
Yes, yeah. I would think that it takes a lot of support from different people on a trike to support the race itself. So do they participate in something like that?
So most of the races that I compete in, the company, whether it's Ironman or a local company, does most of the support, but you know, in terms of, you know, organized water stops or rest stops or things like that, you know, aid stations,
Yeah,
to get you going. But as my wife always says, being a supporter on race day is harder than being the athlete on race day. A lot of running around and cheering and negotiating, and it's
yes.
just as long a day for them as it is for me.
How do you pick your races? Because they can go all over, can't they?
They can go all over, correct.
All over the world.
All over the world. So I like to, if possible, pick them within a reasonable driving radius.
Okay.
It's just convenient to get there expense-wise and work-wise, but we have traveled, which is always exciting to go to a new place.
Yeah.
A little more logistical issues getting your bike down and whatnot, but we've had the opportunity to travel mostly in the States.
Yeah.
Every now and then we toy about doing a race internationally.
A race where you kind of cut out?
Internationally.
Oh, internationally.
You know,
yeah,
maybe
well, that would be fun.
there are some beautiful venues, and if you can connect that with a vacation, that would be really nice. I was fortunate enough to qualify for the World Championships in Kona, Hawaii, so that'll be a big trip. Not this year; it'll be in October of 24. In part due to COVID, in part due to an injury. So that's when I'll be racing there. So that'll be a very big trip.
That'll be a beautiful place.
Be a beautiful place. And yes, there will be a vacation week after the race.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well deserved, not just for me, but for my wife.
How would somebody begin if they're really interested in competing at that level that you've, how would they begin the training for an Ironman competition? Is there a club, or you just personally decide to do it?
You would be surprised. You can, you know, especially now, you just go online. There are some form of triathlon clubs. So you get hooked in with that. While what we've been talking about is what they call the full distance race at 140.6 miles. There are races at 70.3 distance. There are shorter races, what they call sprints or Olympic distances, which local communities have a lot more of, because they're just easier to organize. You don't have to close as many roads. It can be over in a couple hours as opposed to a full day event.
Right.
And you know, it all starts with the first step. Start small, and you know, go out for a short jog or run.
Yeah.
When I started this, Joyce, I did not own a bicycle. Went out and I bought
Really?
one, and I had one when I was younger,
Yeah. Right.
but I went out and I got on my bicycle. I've been a runner. I run many
Yeah.
marathons. I've been doing pretty well. So athletics and endurance events was not uncommon for me. It was something I was familiar with.
Right.
But truth be told, I got this in my head that I wanted to see how far I could actually push my body and what I was capable of.
Yeah.
Known about Ironman, I researched it. I signed up for my first race. I didn't tell my wife for 6 weeks. I was so nervous and so scared. Could I do this? And then I had to find a pool to join, and you should have seen me in the water. But over time, you build this community. Like I said, there are many local tri groups where you can get a lot of support. A lot of people have coaches, which and coaching. People think, "Oh, I'm not good enough for a coach." Coaches,
it's the only way to go.
It's the only way to go, and there are so many different levels of coaching. Sometimes you don't need to have an Olympic quality elite coach if that's not who you are, right? A coach is about understanding who you are, and you say, I only have 6 hours a week to train.
Right.
Well, it's your coach's job to understand how to maximize that time. Not everybody can put in 20 hours a week for these huge training sessions.
Right.
A coach is there to understand that, I have a family trip or wedding coming up. I'm not training for a few days. How do I work around that? Right. So a coach is also there to, I think, rah-rah, cheer you on and be your motivation when things get a little difficult sometimes too.
Yeah, I had a trip that I was going to go to Scotland. I decided I wanted to go to Scotland. So because I've been cooped up in my house watching Outlanders, and that whole series was in Scotland, and I was just in love with Scotland. So I got on the internet and I found a travel group that would do something, and I wanted something about the Scottish, the plaids. I did a tour about the plaids. And so anyway, I went there. But the only reason before I go, when they sent me the itinerary, they said we had to walk up this mountain. Now, I had done no exercise. I'm not terribly healthy. So I went to the gym. I really did sell myself on the importance of a woman my age that wants to get healthy to go on a trek up a mountain in Scotland. I need some help. So of course I got the coach, and it's just changed my life, because now I'm at the gym not all the time, but 2 days a week. That's so great. It's a nice change. It's a wonderful change, because those are, they're little gifts that you get along the line, because we keep melding and wanting to do more. Anyway, that's my story.
Well, it's a great way to hear you describe it as a gift, because if you enjoy it, it's so
I don't always enjoy it, let me tell you, because I'm not an advocate workout person, but I do enjoy it when I can take that trip and walk up that mountain. That's my gift.
How was the trip?
Awesome. Scotland. Everybody should try and put that on their list. It's a beautiful country. The people are wonderful. It's a treat. It's really a treat.
It's on my list.
Get a run there.
I will.
It's a beautiful country. So anyway, well, we are fast approaching the end of our show. And I am sorry about that, because we've had such a good time today.
This was really a treat for me.
Yeah. But I do know there are many people that might want to stay connected to you, be able to follow you or something. So is there a way that they can do that on internet or Facebook or?
Yes, I think the best way to do it is through Forever Families Through Adoption.org. If that's a mouthful to remember, Forever Families Through Adoption.org. If you search FFTA Sam.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
That'll take you right to the website. Also on Instagram, Adoption FFTA. If that, they have their link there, whatever your medium is. But yeah, you put in Sam, FFTA, adoption, it will get you there. But FFTA Forever Families for Adoption .org is the full website name in Rye Brook, New York, as I said. And I would love to have people follow, comment. If they need information, connect with Joy.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
I'm not nearly the expert, but I'll talk to anybody.
Well, I do think for that young lady out there that is asking questions and she's found out she's pregnant and what does she do now? She would be wonderful to connect with Joy. So
Phenomenal.
That she can, give her some of those next steps to help her make that decision. So, that would be important. Well, I've just enjoyed every minute of it. And so
I did too, Joyce. This was wonderful.
And I thank you for your work on the board because I know fundraising sometimes is a challenge in this economic time. It's always a challenge. Whether we're going green, it's always a challenge. But anyway, I do appreciate what you do. And I look forward to hearing about your successes in your triathlons and also in your forever family life.
Thank you, Joyce. I appreciate that.
Yes. And the best to your boys and your wife.
Thank you. And to your family as well.
All right. So anyway, thank you very much. Now, wait just a minute. I'm going to say goodbye to my listeners and then you and I can say goodbye. Okay. But now, weren't you fascinated by all of that Sam has given you today, giving you solutions, giving you opportunities, giving you growth, and it can affect you in so many ways. Now, the other thing that you can do now is that you can share this with somebody perhaps that is pregnant and needing some guidance, or maybe that somebody's just a parent like myself and would be interested in knowing some of this information. Because actually it's been 30 years since I adopted, and it was also for Sam, where we adopted about the same time, didn't even know that. But anyway, there's always a way that you can take a part in helping somebody else. So I thank you for listening. I hope you'll do and share with your community the information that we've had here today by just sharing the site and the podcast. So thank you for being here today. It's always a pleasure to know you're out there listening. Thanks. Have a great week.
Joyce Buford returns next week at the same time for another edition of Second Wind. Through the Joyce Buford Empowerment System, women are receiving the support they need through their transitions and are able to reclaim their true purpose with confidence. They receive the tools they need to map out new lives. You can find out more about her coaching services at joycebufordempowers.com.